Hello, everybody. How's everything? Can you guys hear me? There we go. There's some video for you. Geez, man, what's wrong with my hair? Oh my goodness. How's everybody doing? Can you guys give me a thumbs up if you can hear me? Or maybe I will just, can you hear me and see me? All right, thank you, lovely. I love it. And if you can't hear me or see me, then you won't be you won't know. Anyway, I hope everything is good. Thanks, Ashlyn. That's great. We are recording. We are live, and welcome to week 11. Can you believe it? Week 11. There's a week 11, week 12, and week 13. We're getting down to the nitty gritty. Okay, we have quiz 5 and quiz 6. That's it. That's all we have going on there left, as well as assignment 2, the nervous system. So don't forget about that one. That one there is always creeping in the background. But we're getting down to it. Hopefully there this weekend I'll have some time and I'll be able to I'll post the weighted column, so that will be your mark as of today, and just to let you guys know. But as far as I see, there's really not a lot of issues there. The quiz 4, there was a couple people there that I'm going to contact, but generally speaking, you guys are just doing great. If there's any trouble at all, let me know what's going on. But, whatever you're doing, don't change a thing, kind of a thing. Okay, I hope the rest of your courses are going well. If there's anything there that I can do to assist, let me know. All right, but other than that, we are moving and shaking. Today is a good one. Okay, respiration, very important. And it's one of those there that you do later on in the course. Same with kidneys. You don't do kidneys early on. You do them later on because you have to have the awareness of the other organ systems that the kidneys, and the same with respiration, the other organ systems there that the respiration kidney system there that they tap into. So to no further ado, this is a good one. All right. So let us go, shall we? Now, what's going on here? Screen. Oh, come on, don't give me any. There we go. Now, hopefully there you guys can see that. No, is the internet okay? Yeah, I don't know. The computers, I love them and I hate them. So, if you guys can see the screen, give me a thumbs up. I don't want to go back. Ashlyn, can you see the screen? Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you, lovely. That's awesome. All right, so here we go. We are rocking and rolling. No, I'm just going to shove that over there. I don't know why that's so big. Okay, there we go. Okay. The respiratory system, anatomy, breathing, and some diseases. This is a nice little intro to the respiratory system. All right. Why do we breathe? Like the whole idea there that, we all know that we breathe in oxygen and we breathe out carbon dioxide. But can I ask why oxygen specifically? And just to let you know there that we need oxygen. And for the very exact same reason there that you need oxygen for a fire. In order for a campfire to burn, you need oxygen, right? And if you want to put that fire out, extinguish it, okay, then you spray carbon dioxide, okay, fire extinguisher, carbon dioxide, which provides a layer between the fire and the air and the oxygen, and that's how a fire goes out. Well, so if a fire needs oxygen in order to burn, well, what do you think it is you're doing with that banana you had for breakfast? You're burning it at a very, very, very low temperature. It's exactly the same process. Okay, so we need oxygen to burn our food, and instead of there being a fire in our tummy, which wouldn't be very productive, our body, over millions of years of evolution, has developed a system in order to capture that energy and store it in the form of ATP. All right, which is basically our energy currency. Okay, and if we want to do bicep curls or walk to the store or pick up our kids, do anything that requires energy, well, then we spend these ATP molecules. And if we run out of these ATP molecules, we get hungry and we need to eat more. All right, so just to let you guys know right off the bat, why oxygen? To burn our food so that we can get energy from it, right? Carbon dioxide is a waste product of this process. Okay? We'll get more into this as we go. Aerobic as opposed to anaerobic. Aerobic means oxygen. In the presence of oxygen, anaerobic does not. Okay, no oxygen. It's all about ATP production, carbon dioxide generation forming carbonic acid. All right. We'll get into more of these as we go. Overview of the respiratory system. Takes in oxygen, removes carbon dioxide. Bingo, number one. There's a lot of other things there that the respiratory system does as well. Very important one. Regulates blood pH. Okay? And if you don't know this there, the blood pH is about 7.35 to about 7.45. In and about that range. Okay? And I mean 7.35 to 7.45. Okay, it doesn't fluctuate, and if it does fluctuate outside of those parameters, okay, it's pretty tight, man. 7.35 to 7.45. It's pretty tight pH, and if our blood pH goes outside of that, we're dead. Okay. You get into something there called acidosis, okay, acidic blood or alkalosis, they're basic blood, and our enzymes stop functioning, okay, so our enzymes require a blood pH very, very specific, and it's all based on a junk product that's on its way out, okay. The cells in my big toe, they utilize oxygen, and they breathe out carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide enters the blood and it's on its way to the lungs to be expelled. Well, from that short distance from my big toe to my lungs, the body changes this carbon dioxide, okay, into a blood buffer, which helps to maintain that's very, very, very specific blood pH. Warms and moistens inhaled air. Okay, you do not want, worst thing you could do is breathe in, a cold, dry air, because that'll just, suck the water right out of your lungs. Okay, so the whole point there is the air, when we breathe it in, it's warmed and moistened before it hits our lungs. We have lots of nose hairs there that filter particles. Okay, very important. The air passing in our nose there provides us there with a sense of smell as well as taste. Okay, you ever notice there you can't taste anything if you plug your nose? Very true. And allows us there, air moving over our vocal cords gives us sound and the ability there to communicate verbally. Respiration involves both the respiratory and the circulatory system. So that's why we kind of do respiration after circulatory system. Okay, we'll get more into that as we get some diagrams there. 5 processes that supply the body with oxygen and dispose of CO2. These are all gravy. I love them. You'll see them there on the test. And they are specific. Excuse me. Ventilation, movement of air in and out of the lungs. Okay? So that is what we call ventilation. Sorry, just turning off the stupid phone here. Ugh. Life was so much better before phones. There you go. Inspiration, also known as inhalation, breathing in. Expiration, exhalation, breathing out. Respiration, now gas exchange. Now when we think of respiration there, you're thinking there between, the interaction there with our lungs and the outside, air. But there is also cellular respiration. And this is the exchange of gases going on at the cellular level in my big toe. Okay? So there's two kinds of respiration that we're going to be talking about there today. Okay? There's the actual ventilation. Okay? The movement of air in and out of the lungs. Okay? When we're talking external respiration. But then we have what's called internal respiration or cellular respiration, where the gases are being exchanged at the cellular level. Okay? Good stuff here. So, and you'll see there that we've got these broken down into, and you see there's a bit of overlap here between the circulatory system and the respiratory system. Understood. Pulmonary ventilation. Pulmonary means lungs, right? So this is the act of breathing, movement of air in and out of the lungs. You have external respiration. O2 and CO2 exchange between the lungs and the blood. So the whole idea there that pulmonary ventilation, the actual air moving into the lungs and then moving out. Okay? But then you have what's called external respiration. This is where the oxygen then comes into the lungs and then jumps into the blood. And conversely, CO2 is coming up into the blood. Okay, you'll know there that it comes into the right atrium, the right ventricle, okay, out the pulmonary veins to the lungs where the CO2 is dropped off. Okay, so that's what we call external respiration. And the CO2 jumps from the blood to the atmosphere where we blow it out. Transport, oxygen and CO2 in the blood. And you see now we've kind of made a jump over to the circulatory system, which then moves that oxygen and CO2 around, right? Moves it there to my big toe. And then we get internal respiration. This is the movement there of the two gases between the blood and my big toe. All right? Or my arm or wherever. Okay? Cellular respiration, this is the act of ATP production. So utilizing that oxygen, okay, to burn the sugar, to create ATP, and in the process makes CO2, carbon dioxide, for exhalation. Okay, lots of good words there. You'll see them. Okay, and you just need to look. You don't need to remember any of this stuff. You just need to dig through it for sure. Okay. That is a good cup of coffee. So anatomy there of the respiratory system, and you'll see what's going on here. I have better slides here that I'll show you, but just generally speaking there, the upper respiratory tract, okay, up in this area there, okay, we've got the nose, nasal cavity, okay, which I'll show you there. You'll see nasal conchae and all this there. You'll see the sinuses there of the head, and you'll know there that the head, if it was a solid piece of meat, we'd all be walking around with broken necks. Okay, there's a lot of empty space in our head, and I mean absolutely no disrespect. Okay, it's just the way it is. There, enabling there our cervical vertebrae there to be able to support our head, but it allows there for resonation there for sound. And for pressure distortion, okay, for relieving pressure because pressure will build up. And you do know there that the ears, the mouth, and the nose are all connected. All right. Then we get into the pharynx. Okay, there's oral pharynx, laryngopharynx. We'll get into those there. The bronchial tree. Okay. There's the larynx there. Okay, moving on down. Okay, you have the trachea. Okay. Then the bronchial tree, as you can see it in here, embedded in the lungs, and then the very lungs themselves. Don't forget about the diaphragm, this bell-shaped muscle, that it's relaxed when it's in a bell shape. Okay, and we'll show you that there more in a little bit. So the structure of the respiratory system includes the nose, the nasal cavity, pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchial, bronchies, bronchioles, and alveoli. Okay, that's the end there when we start to get into the lungs. There's the trachea. Okay, just going back in, there's your trachea, and you'll notice there that it has this cartilage around it. So the trachea, the trachea here is always open. And the esophagus there that we saw last week there for digestion, it kind of looks like a breakfast sausage. Sorry if I've turned you off breakfast sausages for the rest of your life. But yeah, the esophagus there is not maintained by any type of cartilage. Okay, food just comes down, it kind of opens, and the food then plops down in the stomach. But you'll see there the trachea, it's always open. Because what's more important, breathing or eating? Exactly. Moving on. Whereas these can be divided in the upper and lower respiratory tracts, they can also be divided into respiratory zones where the gas exchange happens and the conducting zone where everything else happens. Interesting. Let's have a look there, shall we? So we just have a side shot here of the skull and what's involved here. Specifically there when we're talking about the respiratory tract, there's your nostril for your opening there for your nose, lots of nose hairs in here, and it's just an evolutionary trait there that the more hairs in there, the more you're able there to filter, because depending upon the source you read, every single breath we breathe in about 500,000 bacteria. Yes, you heard me right. So nose hairs are a good thing. You'll see there when we're talking, look at the nasal conchae. They have these ridges there. Okay, it's all about surface area, right? And the cold air comes in, cold and dry, and because of all the surface area in here, it's wet and warm, so this air comes on down. Okay, there's your esophagus there, there's your trachea. Okay, you remember there last week there, you eat a banana, it comes in there, and you'll see there the food comes down. Okay, there's an automatic response there when that food bolus hits the pharynx area. Okay, the oral pharynx, which then depresses the food will depress the epiglottis. Okay, so the food does not go into the trachea, the food goes down into the esophagus. Okay, but you see the air comes in. Okay, it's what we call the nasal conchae. Okay, and you'll see there's your nasopharynx, oropharynx, and laryngopharynx. So this whole area here is called your pharynx. Okay, and you'll see there your nasopharynx there, located there on the upper portion, okay, behind the soft palate, okay, the uvula there, and the air comes on down and down into the trachea. And you see how the opening there to the trachea is always maintained, and there's your esophagus there. As food comes down through peristalsis, it moves it, but here the air just comes on down. Okay. The type of cells there that line the nasal cavity, okay, pseudostratified columnar epithelium. Okay, and they have these cilia. And you'll see there that cilia, they're kind of like seaweed at the bottom of the ocean. And they're not like seaweed at the bottom of the ocean, but this is the description I'm going to give you. You've seen these underwater video there of the seaweed moving with the tide, right? It's moving one way and then moving and then shifting back and forth, right? Well, that's what the cilia, okay, on these pseudostratified columnar epithelial cells, okay? And you remember pseudostratified? You zoom in where they are all touching the basement membrane protein, Okay, they're all touching these guys here. And it's kind of like being at a Green Day concert in the mosh pit. All right, where everyone's kind of hanging out on top of everyone else. But you'll see there that these cilia, these are, like as we said there's 500,000 bacteria that enter our lungs in every single breath. Well, our lungs are full of mucus. All right, and those bacteria, like mucus is a gross thing, but it has a very important purpose. It traps bugs. All right, and now that those bugs are trapped in this mucus, what happens there are these cilia. They move, and they move that mucus up and up and up and up, and eventually get it out of here. Sorry, that was gross. So if you haven't had breakfast yet, sorry for that. But the body is beautiful, but the body's awfully gross. Oh, yeah. So anyway, that is cilia. Very, very important, found all over in the lungs there. Big problem there for smokers is that, every breath there you're breathing in this, the black tar. And what happens there is that the smoke can burn the cilia off, so that now you don't have any cilia in your lungs at all. Your lungs are producing mucus, trapping bacteria, tobacco particles, and there's no way for them to ever get out. And some foreign particle that's going to sit in your lung for 5 years, now you're talking cancer. Okay? Please consult your physician before even attempting anything there your teacher says. But yeah, good slide there. Love it. Lots going on. Cilia, pseudostratified columnar epithelial. The larynx, aka the voice box, is an enlargement in the airway superior there to the trachea. Okay. And inferior to the pharynx. It is composed of a framework of muscles and cartilage bound by elastic tissue. Okay, right in here. Beautiful shot there of the larynx. Your epiglottis there covers the opening there to the larynx, so the food does not enter the lower respiratory structure. Okay. The trachea, or the windpipe. Okay, we've already talked about it there a little bit. Flexible cylindrical tube, about 2.5 centimeters in diameter, about 12 centimeters in length. Okay, you'll see it right there. Mucus also protects the lungs from the infectious agents by catching them. The cilia are continuously moving the mucus back up the trachea and into the nose or mouth. Smoking destroys the cilia, so coughing is the only way to keep mucus from accumulating there in the lungs. And so you'll see that these the trachea, as well as the primary bronchs, okay, in here, they have these cartilaginous rings. Now, it's cartilage, so it's not bone, but, it's able there to maintain the integrity and hold these tubes open, okay, because you do not want these tubes collapsing at all right? Nice little shot here there of those cartilaginous rings there that maintain the opening there for the trachea. Okay, hyaline cartilage. Okay, that's a nice little question. Okay, sneaky little one in there. Okay, ciliated epithelium there. There's your cilia. Okay, good stuff. So moving on down into the anatomy. Okay. Left and right bronchi. Here, this is where we actually enter the lungs, okay, and branch off into many smaller and smaller bronchioles. And eventually there we get into terminal bronchies, okay, terminal bronchioles there, where we find the alveoli. These ones here are located at the end of these bronchial terminals. And you'll see them. They're like these little bunches of grapes. And, I don't really want to get back into, surface area, but, the body, as I've said many times, is a master at creating space where there is none. And you remember there for the small intestine, how does the small intestine absorb that Big Mac combo in such a small amount of time? Well, It's all folded. You remember the villi and microvilli there of the small intestine there, creating all surface area. It's all about surface area, okay? And the same thing there with the lungs. Let's have a look right here. You'll see that here are the alveoli, and you could follow it along here. There's your right primary bronchi, secondary bronchi, tertiary bronchi. Then we start getting into terminal, okay? And at the end of these terminal bronchioles, there you have the alveoli, okay? And yeah, it's all about surface area. And if you were able to, fresh, healthy, pink lungs, if you put all the surface area out, stretched it all out, you'd have about the size of a tennis court. So the lungs have huge amount of surface area. But the problem there, smoking, respiratory diseases, what they will do is they will eat up some of that surface area. So now maybe your lungs are only able there to accommodate 80% of the available oxygen. And you can see how detrimental that could be to, daily life. We'll get more into that there in a little bit. So the bronchial tree consists of branched airways leading from the trachea to the microscopic air sacs there in the lungs. Okay? Love this shot here. The whole idea there that you can see all of the bronchies, primary, secondary, tertiary, terminal, all the way down. Quite amazing there. I'm not too interested in following it all along. Okay? If you can, this is a better slide right here. The whole idea, your primary bronchi, secondary, tertiary, and then terminal. And then you get into the terminal bronchioles right in here, and at the end there we have alveoli. That's a good one there. This one here is just more bells and whistles. Okay. The respiratory tubes. Okay, the structure of the bronchus is similar to that of the trachea, but the C-shaped cartilaginous rings are replaced with cartilaginous plates, okay, where the bronchus enters the lungs. These respiratory tubes become thinner and thinner, and the cell layers thin and change until the alveoli is reached. Okay? It is the alveoli that provides the surface area for the gas exchange. And just getting back into here, there's no gas exchange that goes on. Okay, the gas exchange only happens in the alveoli. And these grape-like structures, I have a great electron micrograph that I'll show you that these are on the inside of the lungs, and you'll see there that they are completely circumvented with capillary. And capillaries do what? Capillaries only have one function: the exchanging of things. So these guys here are completely circumvented with capillaries. The oxygen comes in. It's a greater concentration on out here than it is inside. So the oxygen just jumps across, okay, from the alveoli into the capillary, into the cardiovascular system. The CO2 jumps across from the capillary into the alveoli on its way out. Okay. Just another shot here, anatomy of the respiratory system. Okay, there's your trachea. Okay, primary bronchies, secondary, and then we start getting into the bronchioles, the terminal bronchioles, okay, and you'll see here we're at the terminal. There's your what we call alveolar ducts, and these are what we call the alveolar sacs. It's all about surface area. Just another shot here, the same thing, okay, yeah, and you'll see there that the capillaries are completely circumvented these and covering these guys here. Oxygen comes in, jumps out, CO2 comes in the blood, jumps out, and away you go. So, the alveoli themselves, or respiratory bronchioles and alveoli, are the site of gas exchange. Most of the air-facing surface of the walls are lined by a continuous layer, one cell thick, of simple squamous epithelial cells. So in the alveoli, you have simple squamous epithelial cells. Very different there from here. Okay, different cells going on. Yeah, right here. Okay, These ones here we call type 1 alveolar cells. Okay, blood in the capillaries is only separated from the air in the alveoli from about 0.2 micrometers. That's 10 to the minus 6. That's a millionth of a meter. Okay, so these are the most common. They cover 90% of the alveolar surface. So these type 1 alveolar cells, they are involved in oxygen exchange. It is these cells in which the gas exchange with blood occurs. Okay, these are type 1 alveolar cells. Type 2 alveolar cells, they're not involved in gas exchange. They produce a detergent, a soapy, slippery substance called surfactant. And you can see them right here, type 1. Okay, there's your simple squamous epithelial cells. And then these are your type 2. These are what we call surfactant secreting cells. Okay, similar to mucus, but surfactant is used to decrease the friction and surface tension of the alveoli. Okay, it's kind of like a soapy substance. Okay, water has a very high surface tension, and so we use a bit of a detergent substance there in our lungs to keep everything moving, to keep everything, you don't want that high surface tension, you want everything there to move smoothly. Okay, so type 1 alveolar cells, about 90% of all cells there are involved in respiration. Okay, the moving of oxygen, okay, into the blood, moving of CO2 from the blood out to the lungs. Type 2 alveolar cells, these ones here are surfactant producing. Total surface area of alveoli is very large, which permits rapid exchange of large quantities of oxygen and carbon dioxide by diffusion. Simple diffusion, you'll remember, we covered this there, I think, in week 1 or 2. Okay? The whole idea there, diffusion. Things will move naturally. Doesn't cost us any money, any ATP. Things move naturally from a high concentration to a low concentration. So if you're in one end of a classroom and you some really horrible cologne, perfume, whatever, and you'll see there that in the corner there that you sprayed it on, it's a very high concentration. For the entire rest of the classroom, it's a low concentration. But in about 5-10 minutes into an hour, the whole room will smell like that. Okay, things will naturally move from a high concentration to a low. And that's what's going on when you're talking oxygen, CO2 in the blood. You know there that the blood coming up the vena cava, okay, and returning back to the heart is very low in oxygen, very high in CO2. And that blood there, as we said, right atrium, right ventricle, pulmonary vein to the lungs there, okay, and very low in oxygen. So the blood has a low concentration of oxygen. The air has 21% by definition oxygen. So the oxygen in the air, in the alveoli, is much higher than the blood. So the oxygen just freely jumps. Doesn't cost the body nothing. And the CO2 returning back to the heart via the vena cava is very high. The CO2 in the air is low, so the CO2 jumps. Free money. Okay. Pleura. Now we're going to get into the mechanism of how the lungs actually increase, move, what's going on here. And pleura. And I want you to think of pleura is like saran wrap. Plastic wrap, okay, and we'll get into that there in a second there. The lungs are surrounded by a mucous membrane, membranes there called pleura. You have the visceral pleura, which covers the organ, the lung. You have the parietal or parietal pleura, which covers the inside of the cavity of the lung. So the visceral is actually covering the organ. The parietal pleura is covering the outside of the cavity, the open space there for the lungs. And so you have one membrane and another membrane. And the space between the two membranes is very small and is called the pleural cavity or pleural space. And you see what happens there. Let's get in to have a look here. Now you just orientate yourself here. Okay, this is the posterior, anterior there. There's your vertebral column. Okay, there's your right lung and left lung, and I'll just zoom in a bit. And let's have a look here. So you have your visceral pleura, and this is the lining there that covers the organ itself. And then you have the parietal pleura, which covers there the cavity. Okay, and what's in between there? That's called the pleural space, pleural cavity. And you'll see that what happens, and how I want you to think about this is, if you take a piece of saran wrap and put it flat on the kitchen table, completely flat, a square of saran wrap, and then you take a couple drops of water and you drop it on there, and then you take another piece of saran wrap and put it on, and you kind of squeeze it out so that water is now in between those two pieces of saran wrap. What you've done is you've created a massive suction, and there's no way you could ever pull those two pieces of saran wrap apart. You'd rip the plastic before and that's what's going on. Well, it's exactly the same process of what's going on here. The very act of breathing, right? That's done there with the muscles there around the rib cage, okay? And we'll get into those muscles there. And they expand. The diaphragm pulls down from below. So the whole chest cavity moves out. But, okay, there's your chest cavity. How do I get the lungs to come in? Well, the chest cavity is attached there to the parietal pleura. And there's a surfactant. Remember that slippery substance there? Okay, it's in the middle. And because there's a surfactant in between the visceral and parietal pleura right here, when this expands, it carries the inside. Remember, the visceral pleura there is attached there to the lung. And basically through suction, this guy, the chest cavity, expands and it carries the lung with it. Okay? And hopefully there you understood what I was saying there. If you take those two pieces of saran wrap, you put a little bit of water in between them, squeeze it all out. What you've done now is you've created, a suction mechanism where you cannot remove one piece of saran wrap from the other. It works the same way here. So when this chest cavity expands, it pulls, okay, and because of, there's a suction in between here, okay, this guy goes, this one goes as well, and that's why there's room for movement in here. All right. Hopefully that made a little bit of sense. If it doesn't, shoot me an email and we'll do a WebEx or something there. Just a note there, the right lung has 3 lobes. Okay, left lung only has 2. I think I have a shot here. Okay, right lung 1, 2, and 3. Left lung only 2 lobes. Is there a better shot? Yeah, I guess it's kind of the same shot. There's your 3 lobes and there's your 2 lobes. I like this shot there. Makes room there for the left ventricle. Okay, it takes a little bit out of the left lung. Okay, it's called the cardiac notch. That's where the left ventricle sits. Electron micrograph here. You see blood vessels, capillary, and the alveoli. And you'll see there that the alveoli are completely covered by these capillaries. Okay. And here, I just wanted to show you there what smoking does to the alveoli. Okay. It's not good at all. And you'll see there that the alveoli, they actually turn into paper. That's what smoking does, and it does the same thing there to big arteries as well. And you remember those arteries there, they have to take a hit because the heart, is producing, blood pressure, and those arteries have to be able to take a hit. That's why they're so thick, elastic, rubbery, they can take it. But, with smoking, it changes the structure, the chemical structure of these guys here, and it basically turns them into paper. And paper breaks. And you'll see there that, where there was surface area, because that's the key. It's all about surface area. How much contact is this oxygen going to have, right? Because if there's nothing there to contact with, the oxygen isn't going to diffuse into the blood. And you'll see here that these alveoli, they've been turned into paper. Okay, and yeah, it's not good, not good. So just another shot here, anatomy of the respiratory system. Okay, here's a nice shot there of the diaphragm, and you'll notice there that at rest, it's in a bell-shaped, and you'll see here, you see the lung, it's not even, so this lung is at rest, right? It's not expanded. There's room in the cavity there to expand. All right? So when you take a breath, this guy drops down here. So when you take a breath, the diaphragm drops. And you look, at rest, this is the size of my thoracic cavity. But when you take a breath and the diaphragm drops down here, what have you done to the size of our cavity? You've increased the size, right? Okay, and that's what happens. You've increased the size, and the lungs will come down. They'll fill the entire, right? Because you have the visceral and parietal pleura, and the visceral pleura will follow the parietal, and the lungs will expand, increasing their volume, okay? And then when you want to exhale, okay, you'll see there that the diaphragm returns to normal, the chest cavity decreases in size, okay, and the air is expelled out. Nice shots here of the alveolar sacs, okay? Again, beautiful. Look at all the surface area in there. Look at all the capillaries. You even have lymph vessels. Because remember, the cardiovascular system is great, but it ain't perfect. Elastic recoil. Now, the whole idea there that the lungs, they will stretch, but then they will return to their unstretched position. Now, the problem is if you overstretch them, then they won't come back to where they're supposed to be, right? When you're talking smoking, the whole idea there that an old smoker will have a barrel chest, okay, a chest that is wider than it should be, because for 10, 20 years this person there is gasping for more air, right? And so you're eventually going to stretch the lungs beyond the point. All right, so lungs and balloon want to return to an unstretched shape. Okay, result of the arrangement of fibers there. Okay, you'll see the elastic fibers. Surface tension, there's your surfactant. Okay, water has a very high surface tension, attraction there between polar molecules. This surfactant from the alveolar cells type 2 decreases this surface tension. Okay, and without the surfactant there, we wouldn't be able to get our oxygen in and around. And you'll see there that the shape of the alveolar, the alveolus there is also maintained there because of this surfactant. Okay. Compliance there is a measure of elastic recoil. When compliance decreases, lungs are more difficult to inflate. Pulmonary edema, respiratory distress syndrome, pulmonary fibrosis. If the lungs are too stretchy, okay, they can't expel air on exhalation, possible barrel chest, okay. Inspiration, and this is all about pressure, okay, and if you're not familiar with millimeters of mercury, you will be. Okay, when we're talking pressure there, if you go to the Weather Network there, you'll see pascals, kilopascals, old school there, which they still use in medicine. Okay, millimeters of mercury, mmHg. And normal atmospheric pressure on a nice sunny day is about 760 millimeters of mercury. Okay, atmospheric pressure due to the weight of the air is the force that moves air into the lungs. Now, you remember there that think of our lungs as a hypodermic needle. And you'll see there that when we want to bring medicine in, we stick it into a vial and then we pull back on the plunger. What are you doing to the volume in here? You're increasing the volume, which means you're decreasing the pressure. Increasing the volume decreases the pressure, the air or medicine rushes in. And let's say you push on the plunger. What are you doing to your volume in here? You're decreasing the volume and increasing the pressure. So therefore the air moves out. So just to let you know, this is called Boyle's Law, and it works inversely. You increase the volume, decrease the pressure, air rushes in. Here you are decreasing the volume, decreasing the volume, increasing the pressure, the air goes out. So if you place the same number of gas molecules in a large container and in a small container, what would be different between the two? Then we'll show you there the next slide. In the larger container, the molecules will be moving farther apart. Right? If you have the same number of molecules in a big container and then the same number of molecules in a small container. Just think about if you had 2 people in an elevator and 10 people in an elevator. The 2 people in the elevator, they'd be moving around. They're pretty far apart, probably not even going to hit each other. 10 people in an elevator, wow, these guys are going to be angry. Okay, they're going to be touching each other, rubbing arms, elbows, shoulders, getting upset at each other. High pressure. And remember the 2 in the elevator, low pressure. And you have a look here. It's kind of the same thing of what's going on. Okay? And if you think about it there with the hypodermic needle, the same thing. Increasing the volume, decreasing the pressure. Decreasing the volume, increasing the pressure. It works the opposite. And you'll see here there that what we're doing there is you've lifted this guy up, you're pulling it up, so you're increasing the volume, decreasing the pressure. This one here, if you're pushing down on it, you're decreasing the volume and you're increasing the pressure. That's how the lungs work. Okay? Just some of the muscles there involved in inhalation and exhalation. Okay? You'll see there that you have the external intercostals, and you'll see there that they bring the chest cavity up. You have the diaphragm below. Okay? All right. Sternocleidomastoid muscle there, it's involved, but I always go for external intercostals and diaphragm. Okay, exhalation, the whole idea of pushing down. Okay, you see the diaphragm comes up. Remember, for breathing in, the diaphragm goes down. And then here you have the internal intercostal muscles. Okay, so external intercostals are involved in breathing in. Internal intercostals are involved in breathing out. Major events in inspiration. The nerve impulses travel on the phrenic nerve to the muscle fibers in the diaphragm, contracting them. We don't have control over the diaphragm. Okay? It's an autonomic nervous system process. As the dome-shaped diaphragm moves down, the thoracic cavity expands. Right? The volume of the chest expands. At the same time, the external intercostal muscles may contract, raising the ribs and expanding the thoracic cavity further. The intraalveolar pressure decreases, atmospheric pressure greater on the outside than in the inside. The air rushes in, the lungs fill with air. Okay. Major events in expiration. Here the diaphragm and external respiratory muscles relax. Okay, the diaphragm returns to a bell shape. The elastic tissue of the lungs and thoracic cage stretch during inspiration, suddenly recoil. Surface tension collapse the alveolar walls. Tissues recoiling around the lungs increase the intraalveolar pressure. Air is squeezed out. Remember, it's all about the syringes. Okay? That's how the lungs work. The pulmonary ventilation, how does this relate there to the lungs? Okay, a volume change leads to a pressure change. That's how the whole thing goes right here. Okay, you're decreasing the volume of the lungs, you're increasing the pressure inside the lungs, the air leaves the lungs. Now you're breathing in, you're increasing the volume, decreasing the pressure, the air rushes in. And by the way, that whole idea of breathing in, do you really think that you're sucking in air? You're not. It's the air rushing in. You're not sucking it at all in. Good, let's keep going. And it's that pressure change there that leads to the flow of gases to equalize the pressure. Okay? Pulmonary ventilation is defined as the exchange of air between the atmosphere and the alveoli. Air always flows towards the lower pressure. Always. Since atmospheric pressure is fairly constant, this means the airflow depends on the pressure inside of our lungs. And our lungs are never, ever, ever, ever the same air pressure as what's going on. They're always a little greater or a little less than air pressure. You've heard the story there of a guy on an ATV. He was horsing around and he got kicked off the ATV and landed on a fence post. Yes, and a fence post impaled his lung and it collapsed the whole lung. Okay, and you'll see there that the lungs, they have to be a little above air pressure or a little below. And when the lungs are the same air pressure as the outside, it will collapse and it won't function anymore. The respiratory alveolar pressure is always relative to atmospheric pressure. We measure this in millimeters of mercury or sometimes atmospheres, okay, ATMs. At sea level, 760 millimeters of mercury is equal to 1 atmosphere or 101.3 kPa. That's more for the weather network. Okay. If you were to go to higher altitudes, up into the Andes Mountains or on top of Mount Everest, the pressure would be much lower. So during inhalation, what happens? Your lungs expand, increasing the volume of the lungs. This increases its volume, causing a decrease in pressure. Okay, increase the volume, decrease the pressure. Since air always flows towards lower pressure, the air will enter the lungs. During exhalation, the exact opposite. The lung volume decreases, pressure increases, air always moves to the lower pressure, and it moves to the outside. Okay. Good little slide here that shows you there what's going on. Okay, at rest here, there where the pressure of the air is always 1 atmosphere. Okay, 1 atmosphere is 760 millimeters of mercury. Okay, you'll see there if we breathe in, okay, you look here at the pressure, okay, the intrapleural pressure, okay, and then you have the pressure there of the alveoli. Okay, you'll see there inhalation, we want a lower pressure on the inside. We want that air to come in. So you look at the pressure there of the alveolar, 0.997, which is less than 1, so the air will rush in. The whole idea of breathing out, look at my alveolar pressure in here, 1.003, just slightly above atmospheric pressure in order to push that air out. Great little slide there. This one here, pulmonary ventilation. There are lots of weird things going on with the lungs. The whole idea there that you and I have been sitting here for the past hour or so, and you've been breathing and you haven't even known it. Okay, this is what we call your tidal volume. You're at rest, don't even know that I'm breathing. Okay, but you know, all this time you've been breathing, if you wanted to stop breathing, you can just stop. You actually do have control. Breathe, if you just breathe normally, and then you just suck in the biggest breath of your entire life. So let's try that. And did you know that you could actually breathe in a little bit more after you take in the biggest breath of your entire life? Okay, there are hidden spots in here. The same goes for expiration. You could blow out the biggest breath of your entire life, and at the end of it, you'll be able to blow out a little bit more. Now and the reason why there are all these different types of breathing involved. Watch the movie. I'm not going to play the movie here, but the movie goes into some good detail. Okay, and you have to think there that we every single breath we don't want all the oxygen to leave. We want a little bit of oxygen in there, because what if we hit our head and we go unconscious there for 30 seconds, we stop breathing or something? There's still some oxygen in our lungs there that will hopefully make it over to the blood to keep us going. Okay. Dead spaces. Some air does not reach the alveoli, not available there for gas exchange, occupies anatomical dead space, and this can be troublesome. The dead space holds about 150 milliliters of air. Breathing slowly and deeply increases the amount of well-oxygenated air that reaches the alveoli. Conversely, rapid panting delivers a poorer quality of air to the alveoli because a greater percentage of the inhaled volume of air remains in this anatomical dead spaces. Okay. The sum of partial pressure of the gases in the air, okay, always adds up. So within the air, there is nitrogen, oxygen, argon, carbon dioxide, ozone. There's other gases, and here are their percentages. Okay, nitrogen makes about 78% of all of our air. Oxygen there is about 21%. Argon is about 1%. Carbon dioxide is about 0.03%, and so on. Now, you remember there, based on 760 millimeters of mercury. Well, what would be the partial pressure of nitrogen? Well, you take 78 and you change that there to 0.7808. Change that to a decimal, and then you multiply that by 760. Okay, 760 millimeters of mercury. Okay, and you get this number. You get a calculator and try it out. This one here, you take 20%, 20.9, 0.209, multiply it by 760 again, and you get this number here. And you'll see that, I'll just remove this here. Okay, so that's how we get these numbers here. So this is 100%. This is air pressure. Okay, 100%, 760 millimeters of mercury. Well, we can get what's called the partial pressure. So what is the nitrogen? How much pressure is it causing by itself? Oxygen. What percentage of the pressure of this total pressure is the oxygen accounting for? And you'll see there that oxygen is counting for 158.8 millimeters of mercury pressure-wise. Okay, and this is important. Okay, being able to calculate these. So just the whole idea, based on these percentages in the air of nitrogen, oxygen, we're able there to calculate their partial pressures. Okay, and if you add up the percentages, they add up to 100%. If you add up the partial pressures, they will also equal 100%, which is 760 millimeters of mercury. Okay. So you have a look here. According to the diagram, what would the percent composition of the red atom and its partial pressure if the container's pressure is 1 atmosphere? Well, here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 atoms. Okay, and the total pressure there is 760 millimeters of mercury. Well, there's 5 atoms, so there's 20%. Okay, so 0.2, all right, so 20%, which is equal to 0.2 times 760 millimeters of mercury, okay, equals, calculator, Is that going to pop up? There we go. At some point, I could just get my calculator, which is right beside me, but 0.2 times 760. Uh-oh. 0.2 times 760. So you'll see there, for this one red atom in here, it's 20% of all the, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, divide by 100, divide by 5 is 20, so it's 20%. 20% is a decimal, which is 0.2 times 760 millimeters of mercury. That means that that atom is causing 152 millimeters of mercury of pressure. All right? Not a big part, but you might see a question on the next test about this. It's a good one. Gas exchange and transport. And again, oxygen is around 21%. Okay, carbon dioxide in the air is about 0.03%. So relatively low carbon dioxide in the air, high carbon dioxide in the blood. Things move from a high to a low. That's why when we breathe out, the carbon dioxide just jumps. Oxygen in the air is about 21%. Oxygen coming back to the heart, to the lungs, is negligible. So high concentration to a low. That's why the oxygen jumps from the air into our blood. Dalton's law of partial pressure, just getting into this whole idea there, that with different gases in this soup called air, all of these different gases provide a certain amount of pressure. Okay, and you can add them all up, all right, and you will get the total air pressure. That's how this one works. So, and where did that one go there? Dalton's law of partial pressure. Gas molecules undergo continuous random motion, and they collide with each other. The closer they are together, the more pressure, right? To put 10 people in an elevator, they're going to be more pressure than 2 people in an elevator. Makes more sense, right? Anything that increases the movement will increase the pressure. So if you heat up that elevator, now people are going to be moving around more. The pressure is going to even increase even more, right? Dalton's law of partial pressure. In a mixture of gases, the pressure exerted by each gas is independent of the other. And just going back into this slide here, all of these different concentrations of these different gases within air, okay, they all provide their own particular pressure, okay, that we can add up. They're all independent of each other. They're all different beasts here, okay. So Dalton's law of partial pressure. In a mixture of gases, the pressure exerted by each gas is independent of each other gas. So according to Dalton's law, gases will flow in the direction of the lowest pressure. We know that already, relative only to that specific gas. Oxygen will flow to the lowest pressure of oxygen molecules. Other gases like carbon dioxide will have no effect on oxygen's flow. Carbon dioxide will flow to its lowest pressure. And that's why whenever we take a breath in, oxygen is moving one way, carbon dioxide is moving another way. They're independent of each other. Don't give two hoots about each other. Carbon dioxide is moving from its high pressure to a low pressure, to the outside. Oxygen is moving from its high pressure to its low pressure, outside to inside, independent of each other. So, and how does this affect airflow during gas exchange? That's exactly what we're talking about there. Oxygen and carbon dioxide have no effect on each other, and they're basically doing their own thing. Good. Gas exchange and transport. Here we're talking about CO2 transport. Now, as we said there, remember the whole idea that the blood has a pH of what range? Okay, around 7.4, 7.35 to 7.45. And that's about it. So the whole idea there that the body utilizes carbon dioxide, which is a complete junk product. It's on its way to the bin. It's on its way to the garbage. It's on its way to the lungs. It's time to go. Get out of here. Carbon dioxide is a poison. Okay, if the concentrations are too high, that's why we got to get rid of it. But on its way from my big toe to the lungs to be expelled, what the body does is through an enzyme called carbonic anhydrase, okay, it changes CO2, okay, into the bicarbonate ion, which is HCO3 minus. That's a little 3. Okay, I don't know if I'll be able to. Maybe I will. Yeah. And that minus right there should be up. Sorry, just getting all this done here. There we go. So you'll see that this carbonic anhydrase, carbonic anhydrase, it changes, it's an enzyme there that changes CO2 into this, what we call the bicarbonate ion. And now this is floating through the blood on its way to the lungs, okay, where it will be changed back into this so that it can be expelled out. But during that brief time that this molecule is in the blood, it acts like a blood buffer. Very, very important. Okay? And a buffer is a chemical that resists pH change. And that's what the blood needs. Okay? Because there's all these different processes going on. And, you know, you eat a spicy meal or this or that, and the blood pH will want to change. Well, because we have sufficient amount of this bicarbonate ion in our blood, okay, which is a junk product on its way to the bin, it maintains the blood pH, okay? Because you'll see, where is carbon dioxide located in our bodies at any given point in time? 10% of it is dissolved in the blood plasma, 25% in the hemoglobin, but you'll see there that 65% of carbon dioxide, you know, which is a junk product in our body, 65% of it is found as this form, okay, bicarbonate ions, for the very point of being a blood buffer, okay. Moving on here, you'll see that what's going on, this is the pulmonary, you know, the respiratory system in conjunction there with the cardiovascular. There's your alveoli, oxygen comes in, and you'll see blue blood, no oxygen, high in CO2, red blood, lots of oxygen, and little CO2. And you'll see what's going on here. The oxygen jumps in, CO2 jumps out, okay, and then it comes back to the heart there, the pulmonary artery, back into the left atrium, left ventricle, and out the aorta. Okay, so now the circulatory system is dropping off oxygen there to my tissues because it's a high concentration of oxygen, low concentration of oxygen, free money, it jumps. High concentration of CO2, okay, low concentration of CO2, the CO2 jumps, and then back, okay, vena cava, right atrium, right ventricle, pulmonary artery, and away you go. Okay, another good shot here. Here we're dealing with remember the partial pressures, and you'll see there the oxygen, the air coming in, right? And you'll see the partial pressure of the oxygen, which is about 104. You'll see the partial pressure of the oxygen in the blood returning to the lungs there is about 40. So free money. This oxygen jumps freely. Partial pressure there of the carbon dioxide in the alveoli is about 40. Partial pressure there of the carbon dioxide in the blood returning there to the lungs is about 45. Bigger pressure, the gases will go to the lowest pressure, so that's why the CO2 jumps. Okay? Dealing there with the cells. Okay, you remember there the oxygen coming in. Okay, the oxygen, high pressure, 95. Oxygen there in the cells, 20, jumps, and you'll see there that the oxygen in the fluid, in the interstitial fluid there, okay, is 40. so the oxygen there is able to permeate through and make it on through. And you'll see the inverse there for CO2. CO2 pressure in the cells is 46. In the interstitial fluid there is 45. Within the blood in the capillaries there is about 40. So the CO2 freely moves its way. Okay? Same slide, different shot. Just the whole idea there of the movement of oxygen and carbon dioxide, okay, from the blood. You'll see here, here's the alveolar wall, okay, and here's the inside of the alveolar. This is the air that's made it all the way through the terminal bronchioles, okay, and you'll see there again, the partial pressure of the CO2 is 45. The partial pressure of the CO2 inside is 40. Free money jumps. The same thing with oxygen, 104 inside, 40 on the capillary, so the oxygen jumps. Okay. Oxygen transport. Almost all oxygen carried in the blood is bound to the protein hemoglobin in the form of oxyhemoglobin. Hemoglobin there is a protein with an iron atom at the center of it there. There are 4 of them for every RBC. We'll show you that there in a second. The chemical bonds between oxygen and hemoglobin are relatively unstable. Okay, the oxyhemoglobin will release the oxygen into the body cells. Okay, like that hemoglobin there, it doesn't have 100% hold on that oxygen. That oxygen is loosely bound to the hemoglobin. And then when the pressure is able to push it, that oxygen is able to be released very freely. Okay. About 75% of the oxygen remains bound to hemoglobin in the venous blood, ensuring a safe CO2 level and thereby pH. Carbon dioxide transport, we've talked about that there. The majority of CO2 is bound as bicarbonate ion. There's your carbonic anhydrase, which is an enzyme found in the erythrocytes that increases the chemical conversion of CO2 into bicarbonate ion. Okay. Gases transported there in the blood, and you can see oxygen, oxyhemoglobin, carbon dioxide, okay, and the numbers there are a little different there. At 65 here, it's about 70% bicarbonate ions, okay. Controlling of breathing, the whole idea that we can stop our breathing, like my son there. I remember when he was young, Dad, I want this. Well, I'm sorry, you can't have it. Well, I'm going to hold my breath until I die. Okay, well, just make sure you sit down first, right? You can stop breathing, hold your breath, but eventually you'll start again. That lasted one time, and he's like, Dad, why did I start breathing again? Well, your body just takes over, right? So here we've got the medulla oblongata. Okay. Via the phrenic nerve, involved in organizing the inspiration and expiration. Okay, you've got the pons, okay, which is your pneumotaxic center, apnostic center. You've got chemical, okay. Remember the partial pressure of CO2 and acid are major regulators. Okay, if you've got acidic blood, you're going to start breathing a little bit more to get that CO2 out. Chemoreceptors there, central nervous system, peripheral nervous system, carotid bodies there, aortic bodies there. There are sensors there that are located in the aorta. And you think, what are these sensors looking for? Would they be looking for oxygen or carbon dioxide? And logically you would say these sensors are probably looking for oxygen because oxygen is what we need, but these sensors there are looking for carbon dioxide. So if there's an increase in carbon dioxide, you need to get breathing more to get that CO2 out. Neural control of breathing there. The medulla oblongata fires rhythmically and stimulates the phrenic and intercostal nerves. Okay, this action by the inspiratory neurons is the starting point for respiration. When the inspiratory neurons quiet down, the expiratory neurons fire and initiating inhalation. Okay. Opioids. I'm not sure if maybe you're new. I'm in Barrie, but all of Ontario, all of North America has just been inundated, and opioids are everywhere. And these are depressants like alcohol. Okay, morphine, which depresses the respiratory function. They are administered there without checking for adequate respiration. Can be troublesome. Okay, people have been known to stop breathing. Okay, when they take these or take too much or take them outside of the prescription there for a doctor. The PONS controls two centers there that affect the rate of respiration. We've got the chemoreceptors there, which regulate the rate and depth of respiration. The primary regulator of respiration is the partial pressure of CO2, which kind of goes contrary to what we think there, that oxygen is the end all and be all, and that's what we're going to monitor, but it is not. It's the partial pressure there of the CO2. The phrenic nerve, which stimulates, love this word, innervate. That is the scientific medical word for like a nerve being stimulated. Okay, so the phrenic nerve innervates the diaphragm and gets it going. Okay. Regulation of breathing. There are several key triggers there for breathing as well. You've got irritation to the airways. Okay, signals a reflex there that inhibits breathing. Temperature, increased body temperature leads to increased rate of breathing. Okay. Medications, general anesthetic, morphine, alcohol will slow down the rate of breathing, while amphetamines will stimulate and increase it. Blood levels of oxygen, CO2, and acid. Breathing rate and depth will increase if oxygen decreases or if carbon dioxide and or hydrogen ions increase. Okay, good to know. Receptors, when we're talking about regulation of breathing here, these key triggers are usually detected by receptors such as the stretch receptors. You remember those? Okay. The whole idea, what slide is that? 61. Remember then where we're talking about stretchiness. Okay, the whole idea of elastic recoil. When the lungs stretch, inflate, they kind of know where to go back to. But if you overstretch them, then you've overstretched the tissue, and the tissue won't return back to normal. Where was that? 61. Stretch receptors there in the smooth muscle there, the airway prevents overinflation. Okay, but people there who have some type of a respiratory disease or smoke, okay, they're going to perpetually overinflate their lungs and overstretch them. Deep inhalation will stimulate the stretch receptor and inhibit breathing in any further. Okay, peripheral chemoreceptors there in the carotid artery. Okay, when you're on your way to the brain or the aorta. Okay, detects low CO2 and high acid. Detects high CO2 as well. Okay, when you're talking there in the medulla. All right, so there is a receptor there that detects there for low oxygen and high acid, but there's also a detector there for detecting high levels of CO2. Okay. Just a nice little regulation of breathing here. Just takes you all through stimulus, receptor, integrating center, effector, and effect. And this is from a nervous system point of view. This could very much help you there on your assignment there that is currently out. Okay, like the stimulus would be exercise. Okay, oxygen used and carbon dioxide is produced. This message is received, okay, by the chemoreceptors, which detect the lower level of oxygen and increased level of CO2. Okay, sensory information there is sent to the medulla oblongata. The medulla signals the inspiratory muscles. Okay, the effect, increased rate and depth of breathing. You know, that whole, when you're exercising there, you start breathing heavily and increased rate. It's for this very purpose until a homeostasis is reached. Beautiful slide. Okay, the whole idea there that you're tying in the nervous system with the respiratory system with the cardiovascular. Okay, Beautiful slide. Excellent. Regulation of breathing, coughing and sneezing. Okay, these aren't really involved with normal breathing. Okay, why do we cough? We get stuff out. You know, the lungs there are full of mucus. Okay, there's irritants, people who smoke or work near barbecues, allergic or not there, this can trigger coughing, and since your body is trying to get things out of your lungs. Sneezing, this is an irritant, can cause stimulation of receptors there in the nose of the pharynx. This causes the medulla oblongata to stimulate a long inhalation with a forced expiration. Right? There's your sneeze. Voluntary control of breathing originates in the cerebral cortex. Okay, we can control our breathing, but eventually we lose that control. Now moving on into some diseases. Okay, COPD, where you guys are going, you will encounter these diseases quite frequently. COPD is what we call chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and this is kind of like a blanket term. Okay, refers to emphysema, chronic bronchitis, or a combination of the two. Emphysema there is caused by destruction and collapse of the smaller airways, the bronchioles, and loss of the elasticity. Okay, people lose the ability there to exhale. Chronic bronchitis is characterized by excess mucus production in the bronchs. Okay, chronic inflammation there in the small airways. And we'll show you these there. Some quite devastating shots here. Here's a nice pink, beautiful alveoli. And again, you see all the walls, all the surface area. Huge amount of surface area. And look what's going on here. Somebody there, characteristic there with COPD. You've lost some surface area. Okay? And that is very troublesome now because there's not a wall. There's nothing there for the oxygen to attach to make it over and jump over to the other side and get into the cardiovascular system. Okay? Asthma there is the disease characterized by intermittent episodes in which airway smooth muscle contracts strongly, increasing airway resistance. The basic defect in asthma is the chronic inflammation. Okay, we'll show you these right here. This is a nice bronchiole there, and you see the lumen. Okay, the lumen's that big because we need that amount of air to be coming down every single shot, right? Well, look what happens. Not only with asthma is you have this inflammation, this irritation, right? And that's what irritation is, right? There's more cells there than should be because there's something going on. There's a problem, swelling, right? So we've lost our diameter of our lumen, and not to mention now there's even mucus in there. So how do you breathe this amount of air every breath through this space? You don't, and it's horrible. Okay, every single breath is painful. The first aim of therapy there for asthma is to reduce that inflammation. You've got to get that inflammation down. Okay, you've got to open up that airway. Okay, there's anti-inflammatory drugs. Okay, they can do that. The second aim there is to smooth the muscle contraction. Bronchodilators, okay, that steroids there that will reduce the amount of mucus and get that lumen, that airway up and running again. Okay, lifespan changes over time. The cilia become less active, or they just don't grow back anymore, so therefore now a person's ability to remove mucus is absolutely lessened, and then that means there that things get into the lungs stay in the lungs. That's the troublesome, and some foreign particle that's sitting there in your deep dark lung for a couple of years, now you're looking at cancer, right? Mucus thickens, swallowing, gagging, and coughing reflexes slow down. Macrophages, you remember those are the Pac-Man in the lungs, they lose their efficiency, so now more bugs are more rampant there within the lungs. An increased susceptibility to respiratory infections, A barrel chest may develop. Okay, that's a sign, a primary sign there of breathing difficulty. Happens later in life there. Bronchial walls thin and collapse, as we saw up here. Okay, very troublesome. And dead space. You want to minimize the amount of dead space in your lungs for sure. Last slide there. You guys have done very well. Congratulations. There's week 11. Adult breathing rate there is somewhere around 12 to 20 beats per minute. Okay. Generally, the more physically fit we are, the less breaths we take. Okay. Like an Olympic level athlete breathes very little, but the ability there to absorb oxygen is greater. Anoxia, O2 deficiency, where cells do not have enough or cannot use the oxygen present. Asphyxia, this is low oxygen, high CO2, feeling of suffocation. Hypoxia, low oxygen there in the inspired air. All right, this is what we've got going on. I hope you guys are doing great and that you're actually still there. I still see some of you. Okay, and I'm just going to stop sharing, and I hope that was fun. And I don't think that there's no test there this week. You guys just finished up quiz 4. I saw that, and the results were good. Just keep on going. And thank you, Tally. I appreciate it. Have a wonderful week. I'll post this video there, and we just keep on going. All right? Whatever you're doing, don't stop. Okay? Have a great week, and we'll see you next week for sure. Take care. I'll be in contact on the announcements. Thank you. Jeez, man, my hair looks like crap. I gotta comb that. Take it easy, guys. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.